Dan,
Hello.
go.
Okay.
Oh dear.
Okay. Right. Hello and welcome to Hey, I Loved That Movie, the podcast where we rewatch the films we loved when we were younger to see if they still hold up. I'm Dan,
I'm Michael.
I'm Helena.
And I'm Jamie.
and for this week we watched Treasure Planet. So you guys are going to have to sort of take over on the nostalgia for this one, because my memory of this is... so I had a game on Game Boy Advance, and I couldn't get past the first level, and that's the only relationship I have with this movie prior to watching it a couple of days ago.
I assume you mean the game of Treasure Planet.
Yes, yeah, it was a Treasure Planet game. I remember I had to collect some coins, and that is it.
So
And
every
that sounds
game,
like pretty standard Game Boy stuff.
every game of that time period.
So I didn't see it in cinema because according to the box office takings, no one actually did. But I did have it on DVD several years later on, and I always had very fond memories of it from that point.
Nice. It came out when I was firmly in princess phase, and it doesn't have a princess in it, so I did not watch it.
We should explain what Treasure Planet is.
It's Treasure Island, but in space for no reason.
Yeah, during that weird time when Disney made sci-fi films. So the story of Treasure Planet is about a boy, I can't remember his name because I never remember characters' names.
Jim.
Jim, that's it. He wants to be a spacer. His dad vanished. We never really get an explanation why.
I mean,
I got the impression that he went off to hunt for space whales and just never came back because Space Moby Dick got him.
Man turns up at his house and he goes on this great adventure to find the great treasure planet with all of the world's treasure in it. Treasure Planet has some really good jokes in it, and I feel like a lot of them are missed. And I think one of the best timed jokes in the film is at that point at the beginning of the film where the mum is like, oh, I wish he was just a child again and he was little and he brought home a pet and he was begging me to keep it, and then the door kicks open and it's him with this dying man.
Yeah.
This horrifying turtle pirate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think in their world that the turtle pirate is horrifying. He's just
he was designed, I think, to look really off-putting and ropey and on his last legs. So I think even if you were used to kind of animal people and aliens and stuff, it'd still be pretty shocking when he kind of kicked your door down and burst in.
There is a lot of anthropomorphic furry kind of characters in this film.
Yeah, it's a very, very fun sort of varied creatures and stuff. One thing I couldn't tell about Jim though is he meant to be 16 or 21? I have no idea.
I think he's supposed to be a teenager.
He's I guess about 18, isn't he? Because he's very young when his dad leaves, but then it says 12 years later.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Jim as the protagonist of a Disney film, particularly in the early 2000s, is the original Treasure Planet, Jim was 12 years old or something like that. He was a child, and a lot of Disney protagonists are also children, and the films are marketed at children. So it was a really weird shift of gears that they went with a teenage protagonist, especially when the film was still being marketed at children. I think one of the directors actually credited that as one of the reasons why it bombed. Because teenagers weren't interested in watching animated Disney films, and they're lost. But kids also weren't interested in watching a swashbuckling space adventure about teenagers.
No, they really missed the mark, didn't they?
Have you seen the original theatrical trailer that was played on TVs and stuff? It is completely different to what the actual film is. It's sold as a fun romp around best friends hanging out, going through space on an adventure, with this whole voiceover of his name was Jim and they were best friends, and it's really weird when you watch the advert and watch the film, because the film is a space opera essentially. It's very big, it's very dramatic, and it's very forward thinking in animation style and story. And then you have the trailer and all the marketing is it's a kids film and they're best friends. I think one of the biggest differences between the early advertising for it and the actual film is Ben, the character.
Oh, Ben.
Because Ben is a robot that doesn't have its memory.
It also doesn't show up until the last 20 minutes of the film.
Yeah, he's in deep into the second half of the film, but in the early advertising, he's marketed as one of the friends of the main character, one of the buddies.
Yeah, so I really don't like Ben, and I think I probably want to talk about him a little bit later on because he appears, as you say, quite late into the film. But yeah, there's a real kind of like mismatch between how the film was advertised and what it actually was. And
Yeah.
I think if the film came out today, it would do a lot better than it did in the early 2000s, because like the way audiences interact, especially with like animated films, has changed over time. Currently, animation is seen a lot less as just for like children and no one else.
If it was marketed better, it would have been. If it was marketed the same, I think it would still flop. Also, it had a budget of, just to say the budget of the film is 150 million, which at the time was the most expensive animated film ever made, and it's still up there. Yeah, like it flopping, it made 101 million, which is still more than some successful films. Just because its budget was so high. Like, for example, in Lilo and Stitch, I think its budget was like 91 million.
50, I think.
Yeah, like nowhere
much
near it.
cheaper.
And it wasn't until 2006 or 7 that a animated film was made that was more expensive than Treasure Planet.
What did most of the cost go into then? Because like,
So
The
that's,
drawing.
that is really interesting, because Treasure Planet was one of the last really big traditionally animated films, so lots of like hand-drawn animation, but it was a hybrid animation, so there was some
Yeah.
CGI, and a lot of the cost was sunk by Disney investing in this new software, this new technology called Deep Canvas. It was a way of blending the two styles together, where you'd have a partially CGI animated scene and you would draw on top of it, and it meant you could have these really dynamic shots. So like one of the reasons that Treasure Planet is such a pretty film is because you have like camera work, for the lack of a better term, which you don't see very often in traditional animation. So like when Jim gets to actually board the ship for the first time, you get these really elaborate shots of the camera kind of spinning around the ship, and all the traditionally animated characters walking up and down on the deck. And it's a really interesting perspective shot, which is incredibly technically difficult to do if you're just drawing the scene. But like getting that technology to work and like investing into all of the infrastructure around it was super expensive and really bloated the budget out.
Also, a lot of the budget went on the marketing. When they say they marketed it, they threw every type of marketing they could at it. There was deals with like Kellogg, McDonald's, Burger King. There were toys. There was a video game. Like they threw every type. I think there were plans to making a theme ride for one of their parks. They threw every type of marketing they could at this, and it was all wrong. It was all marketed to kids.
You mentioning that has just awoken some memory. I'm pretty sure I had like a McDonald's toy of Ben the robot.
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
haven't
they
seen the
definitely
movie.
did. They did a McDonald's action figure range and puzzles, which obviously I think if it can fit in a Happy Meal, it's not going to be a big puzzle. But then actually Pepsi Cola had like film graphics on their packaging, so like that's Mountain Dew, and like so that is, I guess, a little bit more aimed at teenagers.
Well, it was mainly like that. All that stuff was mainly inside fast food. It was inside McDonald's. It wasn't on like.
Okay. So it's like what comes in the Happy Meal is.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. That was less of a direct deal with Treasure Planet, more it was just a add-on with the McDonald's deal, I think.
Yeah. McDonald's had a exclusive deal with Disney, I think, so they would like sponsor and promote all of their films. But it like Disney always got a lot of exposure for their new projects through those tie-ins, though.
I think the marketing budget was upwards of 50 million.
It's surprising, really, because Disney really went all in on Treasure Planet as an IP, as a franchise as well, because they had all of these tie-in properties, like you mentioned a minute ago, the video games. Before it even released, they had penciled in a sequel, so there was this plan for this whole sprawling Treasure Planet thing, and like even the sequel sounded fun. It was going to be about the dread pirate Ironbeard and Jim joining the Royal Navy Academy and having to chase him down and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's some of those elements got recycled into one of the video games that was made, but the box office disaster that was Treasure Planet completely killed all of those plans and even destroyed the studio that produced it.
Yeah, there is the theory that I think has some credence of like Disney kind of used Treasure Planet to tank its 2D animation departments. And I think the biggest credence of that, the biggest thing that makes that valid is the budget being 150 million, when a similar film like Lilo and Stitch had like half that and like had all the same marketing, all of the same everything. There is the argument that Disney artificially inflated its own budget, so there was no way that Treasure Planet could make a profit. It would have to outsell so much. It would have to be like a really successful film that was because it was an experimental film. Treasure Planet was an experimental film, and it still is. People don't make hybrid animations anymore because it's difficult.
It's too much work when you obviously computer power is just getting higher higher and higher as well. Like, it's not pointless, but it's very much you're doing it for the art at this point, not to make a film, a popular film. Like, you're not going to get the funding to do it.
No.
It has to be a labour of love.
Also, you can mimic the traditional drawing art style on a computer now, and it's still much cheaper.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't think there's much.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much odds of those kind of studios making a return.
No.
That said, I don't think it was surprising that Disney did kill the studio after Treasure Planet, whether or not it was a setup or not, because the writing had kind of been on the wall for the industry for a while. Like from like the high point of the Disney Renaissance, like income had been falling, and especially for this kind of film, the last couple of years had just been like this highway of death of high budget films like Iron Giant, Atlantis, Titan AE.
This is an analytical part of the episode. We will get into the fun later.
Oh yeah.
Right now we're doing the admin. So I think there's an analysis of Disney at that time where they made stories that they told, the films that they made, split into two different kinds after the Disney Renaissance and the sort of second Renaissance it had. It either became like the 3D musical animation that you ended up with, like Frozen and all that stuff. It went down that route. And the other route it took was weird experimental epic sci-fi, and one of those did a lot more successful than the other one. I don't think you can tell which one.
It's really sad because the latter is my favorite type of film.
Well, yeah, and it's very 2000s, and you look at like Iron Giant, which flopped, but like you look at that style of film and you look at Treasure Planet, like beautiful films. Iron Giant is still, I think, one of the best films, and they just didn't sell, and it was where like audience didn't want them. They were hella experimental, so no one really wanted to put money into them, and they were hard to make and hard to market, and it was kind of like they just let it push the boat out and let it die, and that's quite sad. And I'd love for someone to pick up that genre of weird sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, that said, if like there was a film that had to kill off traditional animation, and like you said, they were just pushing a boat out there, I'm kind of happy that it was a high watermark like Treasure Planet, where it was this glorious, brilliant, pretty film, which was like a Viking funeral, where that boat went out there and exploded in this glorious blaze before sinking. And so it's left a great film as a result, but it's just sad how it all went down.
Yeah, and I think the only traditional animation from that time that really survived the burning was Lilo and Stitch, because that's what's insane about Treasure Planet. I think it was nominated for an Oscar. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Picture alongside Lilo and Stitch. And
I think the real issue for them on that one is it was up against some real difficult competition. It was Spirited Away, which there's no way it was going to beat Spirited Away.
They both lost to Spirited Away, but they're the first two Disney films to be properly nominated.
It was a strong year though. That was Spirited Away won, but then it was Ice Age, Lilo and Stitch, and then Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. I didn't watch that one.
Yeah, I think Treasure Planet also came out on the same box office weekend as Harry Potter 2, Chamber of Secrets, which is a horrible film to go up against because, Pottermania and all that kind of stuff.
Which is like another credence to it was deliberately killed off, because no film that isn't a sequel or like a thing is gonna survive against Harry Potter in the 2000s. No film is going to survive that. Like, still one of the highest grossing films ever made. But let's get on to the story. Let's talk about the actual film, the juicy content of this film, because it has so much and it is so good.
So Jim, he's given this, it's a puzzle piece. It's like a map to Treasure Planet. And,
isn't he sort of the only person that can open it as well?
He's never told how to open it. He just knows. That's like one of the few things that really kind of got under my skin was, why can no one else open this?
So I think it's because Billy Bones, the horrible turtle pirate that gives it to him, shows him how to unlock it.
Does he teach him how to unlock it, right?
And then he immediately dies.
Yeah.
There's the weird dog man who... Is he a dog man or like a cow man? Something like that.
Dr. Delbert Doppler.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a dog man.
So
he's a great character.
He was great, yeah.
Yeah, Delbert's great.
He... takes Jim and is like, we'll go to this this space port and we'll travel to this planet. And so as it cuts to like outside and there's a moon, and I was like, why are there stars that you can see through the moon? That's really dumb. You shouldn't be able to see stars through the dark side of the moon. Oh my god, that's no moon. It's a spaceport.
No, I've got to say, I love the visual design of Treasure Planet. It is
It's
so
It
incredible.
good.
was so cool.
And
Yeah.
It's
the
gorgeous to watch. The color palette
shot
and everything.
Yeah, the shot when you first see the spaceport, the crescent moon, is amazing, and I really love the style guide that they used when they were like storyboarding and planning the film out, and they called it the 70-30 rule. The vibe that they were going for was like 18th century stuff, so it's literally pirates in space,
Mhm.
and they decided that 70% of the design, so the visuals, the audio, everything, 70% of it had to be like 18th century, and 30% of it could be sci-fi, which is why you've got like galleons going through space with little rocket thrusters, but big solar sails.
Breathing in a vacuum, not an issue for these boys.
No, I'm guessing they
That's
have.
actually really a really cool nod to history there, actually, because like way back when the Victorians literally thought that space was the ether. I think they call it Ethereum in the film.
Yeah.
And they thought it was like this like big empty plane of like base state where it would just be like the air that we're in normally. So I thought that was kind of cool, where it seemed to be like a nod to what actual Victorians thought space was before we really had the ability to find out anything about it.
Yeah, it was really
Ooh.
cool seeing it as like normal galleons. Also, a ship I would not want to fall off of.
No, it
Like,
looks very
fuck.
easy to fall off. As
Yeah,
well.
that like
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
it's an animated film, and my fear of heights was like, hey, fuck you.
Well, a lot
Yeah,
of the
yeah, no.
time, and also quite tragically, they are just held on by ropes. And if
It's-
that
I
rope
mean-
gets cut by, a
Yeah,
baddie,
that's Gallywag.
Drastically.
you die. And I was pretty upset, not quite ready for actual death. I suppose it wasn't like a main character, but he still
He was-
dies, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Arrow?
he
was
doesn't
Arrow?
die.
Mr. Arrow.
Mr.
yeah.
Arrow.
He dies because the chef for the I guess it kind of tries to lead you to believe that the captain
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
that's
Emma
Captain
Thompson.
Amelia.
Emma Thompson, yes. So also incredible voice acting, by the way.
Yeah,
but
the Treasure Planet is an incredibly well
Yeah.
voice acted.
Yeah.
film.
The relationship between like Captain Amelia, Mr. Arrow, and Delbert is great
It's
as well.
real
Like the
good,
back
yeah.
and forth between her and her first mate,
Mhm.
and like the kind of just constant low key disparagement aimed at their client, the person who's bankrolling the expedition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I thought that was great.
One of my first, like, not complaints, but like, kind of moments for me was like, okay, so he commissions this ship. He's paying for it all. Why does he commission such a terrible crew?
I
'Cause
don't.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Also, I don't think he commissioned the crew. Did he commission the crew? I thought she got the crew, or did he just hire?
No, he hired her and the ship, and also paid for the crew. And
He
she
hired.
was very unhappy that he foisted a terrible crew on her.
Yep.
Yeah. I was
That's
like,
it.
why? But maybe it's because he can't pay anything up front. But it's not explained.
yeah.
Well, he is also useless.
Mm.
Very important part about that character. He is a doctor with a PhD in astrophysics.
Yeah, he does make the "I'm not that kind of doctor" joke.
Joke.
Yeah.
But he is useless throughout most of the film until the end. Like, he has a huge suit of armor, which is like a really early joke. Someone with two heads sold it to him, and one of them was really nice, and one of them was really mean. And I really like
I
that.
really love that scene as well, because it kind of like sets up some world building about the setting as well, where like Captain Amelia kind of looks him up and down, and it kind of dismisses it as a useless antique, and he's got it back to front anyway, and that like immediately tells you something about the history of the setting, that these spacers have been going out there for a long time, and they've got this special gear which has changed over time, and all that kind of stuff. And it just makes the whole thing feel a little bit more lived in, which is
Yes.
quite nice.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really cool.
I do love Captain Minute, and I wish she was in it more.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like,
because
it's one of those things where I was like, I thought, because again, the early marketing was she's in it a lot. She's not really in it that much.
Definitely a supporting character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sets her up as if she's the one that is going to try and sort of steal the treasure. Like, well, I mean, it's obvious from the get-go because the chef is a cyborg who can't
Yeah.
be trusted, with a mimic for a friend who becomes a spoon
Can't
for
be
a bit.
trusted.
Yeah,
Well,
but he can't be
it's-
trusted, and so but I mean, he, obviously throughout the film becomes friends with Jim, and it's like it's trying to make you think that Captain Amelia is going to be the one to try and steal the treasure, and I guess in Jim's eyes anyway.
Yeah.
Mm.
Part of
but-
me thought that the cyborg. Part of me was like, is this a red herring?
I'm a big fan of us just right now analyzing the novel Treasure Island,
Hmm.
which is what
Yeah.
we're doing.
saying all that, I do really like the relationship between Jim and Silver. Like the initial distrust, and then how that changes over time to a kind of like
Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah, it's still
but nice.
well, yeah, no, I wouldn't really say Stockholm syndrome, but it's kind of like he becomes a adoptive surrogate father figure over time, and the way that relationship grows feels really like natural and unforced, which like a lot of the time you find that films just kind of force those things along for the convenience of plot.
See,
Yeah.
I have the opposite opinion. I don't like the way that relationship's spelled out because it feels really like sudden back and forth between are they friends or aren't they? And in some instance, it's so immediately back and forth. Like at the end when they get to the treasure, it's so like, and now suddenly they're friends again. But it's like they're friends again under the pretense that Silver needs Jim to get out alive.
Yeah,
And then-
it's difficult to get a firm reading on what he actually believes, Silver.
Yeah, I think it would have been better if they lent more on one side or the other, because you have him at the very end when everything's back to normal and the captain threatens him to take him to court. He escapes. He's like, I'm going to try and escape and steal a thing, and Jim helps him. Like that feels really opposite to the scene that happened earlier when they're working together.
It glosses over the mutiny.
Yeah, they're like, it's like jarring in and out of friendship with them.
Yeah, so I mean, my kind of read on that relationship is that at first, what you see is pretty much what you get, where Silver sees Jim as a nuisance and inconvenience, and is like undermining his plans because he doesn't have freedom to act to like set the mutiny up and stuff. But as they spend more time together, he comes to actually genuinely like him, and then the rest of the film onwards, from the mutiny to finding the treasure to the rest of it, is him putting on a face for his like mutineers, so they don't betray him as well because they think he's gone soft, and then he's trying to persuade himself that he doesn't have any feelings for Jim because he really wants the treasure.
Yeah.
And eventually he comes to terms with the fact that actually Jim is worth more than like a fistful of treasure that he can claw out of this dying planet.
Yeah.
Family is the treasure.
Yeah,
The
it's
friend
very
of the
it's very
treasure.
Disney, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I get the relationship and how it arcs. I just think it happens really knee jerky, and it happens at such a quick back and forth pace that it feels kind of weird. Because Silver is a really cool character.
Yeah.
He's a really fun character with really fun design and like history.
So on the point of Silver's history, like adding more of it probably wouldn't have actually like contributed to the
Oh,
film
no.
in any meaningful way, but I really want to know more about Silver.
Yeah.
Like that one little scene where Jim asks him how he got his cyborg implants, and he just says, you know, when you're following a dream, sometimes you got to give some things up as well. Silver's background seems absolutely fascinating, and like the film probably isn't the right place to go into it in detail because it kind of distracts from the emotional points that they're making in those scenes anyway. But I don't know, like some kind of tie-in material or whatever, just for people that are interested.
Silver and Jim have the most Disney thing that happens in this film, and they have an emotional relationship building montage,
Yes.
and it is hands down the most Disney part of this. I forgot I was watching a Disney film, and then there was a montage of them working together on a ship.
Yeah,
Oh no,
yeah.
we're back.
The only major complaint I have about that montage is the music as well, because most of the music in the film is really cool. It's like either orchestral or it's like 18th century string music and that kind of stuff. And then you've got the montage scene, and it breaks into a song by the Goo Goo Dolls, I think.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
pretty jarring. It is pretty
It is-
jarring.
It is jarring rock pop
Yeah.
Yes.
in the middle of a film.
Yeah, I don't mind the montage. It's really just the song.
Yeah, it was the song. It did sort of take me out of the beautiful 18th century aesthetic that they built up for so long.
So we've not really talked about Morph.
He's a very cute little scrotum. My favourite bit is right towards the end when he turns into that little puddle.
I did realize until quite far into the film why he's a mimic, and I feel really stupid for not noticing it.
Cool. Well, I'm
Because
going to
he's a
feel really
parrot?
stupid for.
It's because he's a parrot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Because it's a pirate film, because
Because
it's
the
Treasure
pirate-
Island.
it's
That
the
is
pirate
fair. I
parrot.
get it. Okay.
And
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't like how long it took me into the film to be like, oh,
It's all right. It took me until you just said right now. So you know.
So I really liked Morph. I mean, Morph is
I love
Morph is
Morph.
great as like visual comedy, like the little gags and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. He was.
he's
amazing.
he's also a little shit.
Yeah, he
He's also the smallest little shit in the film.
Yeah, he's a sassy little scrotum.
Yeah, one of the things that I found that Lil Scrotum Morph does also bring out is he really highlights sometimes the use of computer animation, because when he mimics something, especially if it's something they've already talked about, he will just shrink down into that version, and it's very much like high definition, and it looks like they've just drag and clicked it, like made it smaller rather than it being like a hand drawn version of what he's being.
So my main problem with Morph isn't Morph himself, it's more about what else he can be compared against. Morph is like the gag visual comic relief for the first half, 3/4 of the film, and then Ben turns up. And Ben is almost purely slapstick comic relief, and he is so annoying and unnecessary. I wish Ben wasn't in the film. Like Morph already had that little corner of things nailed down perfectly well.
Is Ben a character in Treasure Island? Like, is that a character in Treasure Island who knows where the treasure is but has forgotten?
Yes.
Is he a character? Okay.
Yeah, I really don't like Ben.
No.
I wish he wasn't in the film.
He's so annoying. He is the Jar Jar Binks of this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
in like the most literal term.
Yeah, imagine if they'd taken Ben out and instead focused more on like character interactions between Jim and Captain Amelia and all the others, like working out where to go on the planet.
Yeah, because by the time Ben's introduced, so it's just after a like sci-fi action sequence, which I thought was really good.
That fight scene does have one of the best, like a really good joke in it as well, with the Doctor when he shoots at something and Captain Amelia's like, "Did you mean to shoot that?" And he's like, "Yes, actually."
Yeah, that was great.
Good, because they took the opportunity.
Because that whole, like, I loved that whole sequence. It was real good. But during it, Jim sort of, I guess, accidentally leaves the map behind, and Morph becomes the map, and he doesn't realize. But they end up down actually on the treasure planet, and in that sequence, the titular treasure planet.
The titular treasure planet.
Yeah. And Captain Amelia has landed badly or been shot. She's like really injured.
She gets shot.
Yeah. So like having more interaction between her and the Doctor in that sort of scene, instead of, hey, here's a robot that you're gonna fucking hate, would have been a lot nicer.
Oh, that's the scene with the weird sub-dom fetish line.
You're gonna have to explain that.
Oh,
yeah, you need to explain
there is definitely a bit in this film where Emma Thompson, she like acts quite like in a very dom fashion to Doppler, and he likes it. It just was so much. It was definitely like, oh well, this is a joke for the parents in the room.
I thought it was the other way around. I think it's like the one time Doppler actually tells her what to do, and she goes, "You sound very forceful. Tell me to do something else."
Yes.
Yeah. No. Fair enough. I didn't pick up on that being like that, but yeah, no, fair enough.
It definitely is.
No, that's a joke definitely for the parents. And we're back to it being a Disney film.
So then Jim goes off. He manages to sneak up to the main ship to get the actual map. He also kills the horrible spider scorpion man.
The one character in the film that is an actual psychopath.
Genuinely terrifying. So I get PTSD flashbacks whenever I see that guy, because I start thinking of Chris Lids from XCOM. It just gives me a very bad time.
Yeah, Jamie, did you also think that his voice is a lot like Ulysses from Lonesome Road, the New Vegas DLC?
I can see that.
Yeah, I was getting Ulysses vibes from him.
I mean, he's obviously much less philosophical.
Yes, for sure. Instead, he's just an evil scorpion Spider-Man. Who is the reason Mr. Arrow died, because Jim had to check all the lifelines, and he did it right. And then the evil scorpion cut Mr. Arrow's lifeline so that Captain Amelia would think Jim didn't do the job right.
Yeah, and he actually dies.
Tragic.
Yeah, like he falls into a black hole.
Yeah, I mean that scene was tragic for like Jim as well on a character development level, because like you're getting to the point at the film where he's finally starting to believe in himself and like his own capability. Then the horrible Scorpion Man cuts the safety line and lets Mr. Arrow fall off into the void and blames Jim for it, and Jim believes him. As in, Jim thinks that he screwed up and that's why Mr. Arrow died, and it's really heartbreaking seeing like the way that the character is like doubting themselves.
You make a 17-year-old feel like they murdered someone. That's well, not murdered.
Manslaughter at best.
He manslaughtered someone.
Yeah.
That scorpion spider character is terrifying. You know, every kid's film of this time has the horror scene. They decided to make that into a character, because the rest of the pirates, the crew, they're menacing, but they aren't scary. Whenever that character's on scene, it's genuinely terrifying.
Yeah, so you've got like the mutineers. One of them is a comical fart monster.
Yep.
The other one is your living, walking nightmares. So. But I think the horrifying scorpion pirate also gets one of the very best like hybrid scenes of traditional animation and CGI in the entire film, and that's when Jim goes back to the ship to try and get the map after Morph tricks him, and the scorpion's still on the ship, and there's that scene where the scorpion goes charging down the corridor towards Jim and is like on the roof and on the ceiling, and just the perspective shift of how it's running towards the camera and the viewer.
Horrifying.
Yeah, horrifying, amazing like animation, and that's the kind of perspective shot that would be really difficult to do with just traditional animation on its own. It works so well.
Yeah, and then Jim killed him by suffocating him in space.
Ben has also gone with them and is
Yeah.
messing about with some wires.
Again, you can get rid of Ben, and I want to. The rest of this film, whenever we talk about Ben, I want to try and work out how to replace him with a different character,
Like the wires could be Morph.
or just take Doppler.
Yeah.
Like have him have
He could
massive
break
dad,
something.
massive dad energy trying to work out these wires.
Yeah, give Jim like
Huge
a
dad
father
energy.
figure that isn't gonna try and
Yeah.
portray him for treasure, you know?
Doppler could have been such a good father figure, and he's kind of set up to be, and then he never is. And I feel
No.
like if they didn't have Ben, you could replace Ben a lot with Doppler, and
No,
it would
exactly.
have been better.
He is the original comic relief, isn't he? Because he's that fuddy-duddy. He's like the uncle character, and like like in The Mummy Returns.
Yeah,
When
Yeah.
Jonathan sort of takes on that uncle, sort of here
Yeah.
to look after you, but really looking after myself.
it would have also been a nice story for Jim and Doppler if he did get that nice like uncle dad type role
Yeah,
in Jim's life.
I was going to save this for a little bit later, but we're talking about Doppler now. So at the end, you find out that, Doppler and Captain Amelia have actually gotten together and had kids.
Where all of the boys are dogs and all of the girls are cats.
Yeah, because that's how genetics works.
Yeah, and again, we're back to Disney.
Yeah.
Every now and then, you're reminded that
This
it
makes
is
me
Disney. for you.
wonder, like, what if they're not dog people and cat people? What if they're one species that just have really extreme, like, sexual dimorphism?
Yeah, I mean, it gave me an idea for a bit of a hypothetical. So, given that these two maybe different races can mate with each other and have babies, what would be the most fucked creature that you'd get out of two characters from this mating?
Literally anything in the Scorpion. Man.
The Scorpion Man and
Yeah.
the Fart Monster.
Ooh.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
Mm.
bad.
What about
No.
what about Scroop and Arrow? Because then you've got Stone Mantis,
Oh, yeah.
but that's
I
not as
dunno,
bad
that's-
as Scrotum Mantis, actually.
Yeah, I
Mantis,
think
but he
most
can
of
morph.
the terror of the Scorpion Man is just how damn quick he is. Like, if he was made of stone, I think that might detract from that a little bit.
What about
Yeah.
Scorpion Man? And there's that one that is like a head and a body, and they're two different creatures.
Yeah.
The head of that.
Oh.
They're like
Oh no,
Octopussy?
it would be like the monster from The Thing when the head scuttles away.
like an octopus, but also a Scorpion Man.
Ugh.
Horrifying. That might be the worst creature ever. In and out
What
of
a
this.
cursed day to have an imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
kind to us by only giving us cat/dog.
So all of that happens after they get to the bit where the map is telling them to go to, and it turns out
Mhm.
they have to plug in the ball key thing, and it opens up a teleporter, like a portal.
Which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Which is
like
really, really cool.
being able to
We
go
have
from
portal technology.
going to all these different places, and they find out that's how he actually got around and robbed people that much.
The scene where they flick through all the different destinations as well is really cool as well, like
Yeah.
seeing all
Yeah.
the different places.
Yeah, seeing them all come up again, and they realize that they have to open that to get into the center of the planet.
Yep.
And that is where the treasure is, inside the planet. Who knew that the real treasure was inside the planet all along?
I liked how everyone else was confused about where to go and where it could be.
It's really obvious, right?
Yeah, no, it's
I
incredibly
suppose
obvious.
if you're watching a film called Treasure Planet rather than living it,
But they mention it like they like it has a slogan that they keep saying, which is like it's in the heart of the planet. It is the planet, and they're all like, "But where is it?" I don't know. Maybe inside the planet.
but I suppose what they were wondering was how do we get there?
Maybe
Like-
the teleporter that's right in front of you.
Maybe this, triangle that teleports us to different places can teleport us to the place we need to be going to.
There's something-
Maybe they needed to do a crossover with Atlantis and like recruit that little mole guy just so they could drill
Yeah.
down there.
But it's a map with millions of planets, and none of the pirates or like Silver thought, why does this map have the planet that we are currently on?
Although it would be an amazing bait and switch if, like Treasure Planet, the map leads you there because that's where the teleporter to get to the actual destination with the treasure would be.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Well, then it means that the treasure is the teleporters that we made along the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I suppose the teleporter itself actually is way more exciting and interesting and useful than treasure. Like at that point, all I was thinking was like, that's too much gold. Like the inflation would just be ridiculous.
yeah, it was like a Scrooge McDuck level like treasure hoard, really. Like,
Yeah, and also like the teleporter is how like the Dread Captain, was it Flint? That was how he made all his money. Like this teleporter is kind of insinuated to be a like unique, like once in the galaxy thing that only he had control of. So like having this teleporter alone would let you basically hold the galaxy to ransom.
Yeah, because he built an entire planet to build a teleporter, and no one noticed.
I was going to say, does he build it? Is he in charge of it, or did he just find it? I never
don't
really
think it's ever said.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of implied that it was his from like the snippets of stuff that Ben says, and honestly, you could still get rid of Ben and have it as a computer log or something. Like Ben does not need to be there.
No,
yeah,
Ben absolutely does not
all
need to
Ben
be there.
does is tell them that there's a booby trap, which you see them trigger when they walk in. The first thing they do is walk on a laser tripwire. And so to stop anyone from getting this skeleton's treasure, the planet explodes.
Yeah,
basically.
I do find that absolutely hilarious though.
Yeah.
Is like this selfish pirate is like, well, if I can't have it, no one can. But he rigs up his apocalyptic booby trap to one small tripwire at ankle height that someone could step over if they were paying attention.
I thought there were lots. I thought there were lots of tripwires though, or did I just gloss over that in my brain and make it more reasonable?
Like there has to be alien species that naturally wouldn't step on it, that would have like wider gates.
from this point onwards, when the planet starts like collapsing in on itself, and
the treasure planet.
The treasure planet is collapsing in on itself. You see Silver like sort of he chooses to rescue Jim, and then they're trying to escape off the planet as it's collapsing. Like from then onwards, I was like fully in with this movie. I was just like, and he gets to use his surfboard thing like that he makes out of scrap, like he did in the beginning.
It was very frustrating for me that they didn't get any treasure.
They
But
got a little bit.
Like Silver filled his pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole sequence, because straight away I'm like, use the teleporter. Use the teleporter. You're not going to get away. Use it. And so they go back and use the teleporter. And Jim's like riding his little thing along as the planet's exploding. And I was watching it. I was like, this is Halo 3. The one thing, however, so they get through the teleporter, and the teleporter stays open as the planet explodes. And a bunch of debris sort of comes through, and it, I guess, disappears because they don't acknowledge the fact that they might have just accidentally
nuked the moon.
Nuked the spaceport by blowing up another planet and opening a teleporter by it.
Yeah, as soon as it destroys the teleporter, it'll close.
But there was a bunch of stuff that came out of it, though.
I mean, yeah, but that's not enough to destroy a whole other planet.
Oh no, but it would still be like rocketing out into,
And it wasn't as close. It wasn't like they weren't super close to the port, were they? They were like pirateable distance.
Yeah, and it is established that once you're off the ship, there's no gravity in space.
Yes, yeah.
So it wouldn't make it to the planet theoretically.
I don't know, like in zero gravity, like you
surely
start
once
something moving, it won't stop again.
Yeah. It won't stop because there's no resistance.
I guess we don't know actually, because like this is Ethereum or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So actually, it might just slow down.
Might be air resistance.
Maybe there's air resistance once you get to the port atmosphere.
Also, as a space station, it's got to be prepared for random debris coming at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Space junk. Well, I suppose there wasn't as much space junk as there is now.
What happened? It's a lot of treasure.
Does it just melt and form like a big treasury blob that stays there that they kind of could go back to, but obviously they had to travel all that way to get to, and they've lost the map now because it exploded with it. So
I guess Treasure Blob wouldn't work as well as a sequel.
Just a big melty block floating through space.
Giant version
I guess
of Morph,
if like
gold.
The planet collapsed in on it, then I suppose it's just inaccessible, isn't it? Because like there's probably more gold in the crust of planet Earth than there is in that treasure hoard, but we can't get to it because you'd have to dig it all out.
Yeah.
Feels very wasteful on the part of Captain Flynn, though. I think Helena definitely raised a very good point about inflation, though, because like Silver managed to stuff a few gems in his pocket and a few coins and stuff, and he gives
100.
like 2 of them to Jim, and that alone is enough to rebuild an entire like luxury supersized inn, like much bigger than the one that got destroyed in the intro.
Well,
Like
treasure,
if they got hold of that entire planet, just imagine what
Yeah,
would have
I'm
happened.
looking at like a screen grab of the
treasure.
like the actual inside of the planet, and it is like it's sort of Smaug level, but
Yeah.
but planet like it's huge.
So Treasure Planet was lost 100 years ago, right? They mentioned that a couple times, like it was lost 100 years ago.
Which is weird. It feels like it should have been a lot longer ago.
No, I think it should have been sooner.
Like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought that it was going to end up being that his dad was part of the crew that hid all the treasure and that on that planet.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I
that's the
mean,
sort of
but
vibes I was getting
happened.
from it.
I mean,
It
yeah, his
happened
dad ran
100
away
years
to be a
ago.
pirate.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
and
like-
then got stuck there.
Went out on a mission to find Treasure Planet, and at some point he'd stumble across it. It would have been great if maybe he found his. You replace Ben with his dad.
A little bit of dad tie-in would have been nice because he really
Yeah.
is missing at the
Right.
end, isn't he? Because they don't. He doesn't bring him up at all. It's not like
No, he never. he's
yeah.
not
There's
brought
no
up
there's no
again.
trace of him. There's no satisfying. And this is why your dad left. It's no, your dad just
But-
left.
I think that was kind of intentional though, because
No, it is. That's
like his
treasure, I
dad
think.
leaves, and like you get the scene of his mum crying, and then Jim goes running off down to the dock to try and catch him before he goes. And I think the reason that we don't get told that is because like during that scene, Jim is a young child, and we're kind of seeing the scene through his views, and
Yeah.
he's not old enough to understand why it's happening, so we're just not told.
Apparently, according to notes in Treasure Planet: A Voyage of Discovery, the whole idea is that Leland, the dad, and
Mhm.
Sarah, the mum, were 19 and 17 respectively when Jim was born.
Oh wow!
So
Wow.
very much a teen mum,
So he just bailed.
and he bailed.
Wow, not a mention of that.
Well, no, because I
Yeah.
think it's expanded upon in the next book. It wasn't actually the case in the film, but that's the canon explanation.
Yeah, I don't think the film really needs
It
an
doesn't.
explanation though, because having that kind of like father-shaped void in Jim's life is probably why he kind of like latches onto Silver so quickly.
And why he
Yeah.
has to do, he wants to raise the money to rescue his mum's tavern because
Yeah.
that's his job, because there's no father figure there to do it. It falls onto his shoulders, at least in his eyes.
I don't like that Silver becomes the quote unquote father figure. I'd rather it be Doppler.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like it makes way more sense for it to be Doppler. It
And
just
Doppler
does.
does support him in some ways. Like he does lots of practical things, like get him the ship. Yeah, but he's
He's
there's no
never-
montage.
There's no montage at the off-theme pop rock.
So,
So I don't think I'm actually fully on Team Doppler for father figure, because I like personally the way that I see it with Silver is that Silver kind of, I suppose, adopts him in a way because they're like kind of broken in the same way, I suppose. So he sees him as like a kindred spirit.
yeah, Jim wants to be a pirate deep down.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because like Silver teaches him to kind of like believe in himself and like strike out to achieve the things that he wants to do. And like one of the reoccurring things that consistently pops up with Jim is that how he thinks that like his mum thinks he's a disappointment, and like he carries this chip around on his shoulder. And I think that's also because like his dad walked out, like he wasn't good
Yeah.
enough as a child, so his dad left, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Yeah, I just wish Doppler had more of an impact on Jim because it seemed right, like perfect for it. Because Doppler's an idiot and has like big dad uncle energy.
Yeah.
But as much as like Silver tries to like wear him out, and he doesn't manage to. He tries to break this kid's spirit, and instead the kid breaks his determination to like. It's well, actually, wow, he actually does end up impressing him. And make him feel something for this kid, not enough to not mutiny.
Well, I'd love to have seen Doppler be like earnestly pro Jim, like because Doppler seems like a really earnest character, and just have him being like earnestly supportive of Jim in places that like his mum would have been really nice. There's like a character arc for Doppler, because Doppler doesn't really get a character arc.
No, I guess he gets a little bit more confident towards the end. He's a little bit more world weary.
So, how many replacement father figures out of 10 would you give this movie?
I'd give it a solid 9. Like I think it's a great film. There are problems, but I like it. I'd give it 9 missing father figures.
It was that, or
Father-
how many treasures planeted out of
Or
10?
how many transforming scropes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Out of 10.
maybe
Yeah,
he
I
can transform into numbers.
I think 9 father figure size hold in a teenager's heart.
I think I would give
Okay.
it 8 gratuitously unnecessary bends.
Mhm.
8 bends that you would remove from this movie.
Yeah,
Eight-
exactly. I
8
think if
bends
Ben
that
wasn't
you-
there, it would definitely be a 9.
9. I'd say 9 bands that I'd replace with Doppler in every single scene out of 10.
Including when they crash and he's already on the planet.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, the exact same film.
The
Well-
just with
continuity be fucked. Like
No,
Yeah,
he's
no,
a
fuck that.
doppelganger. He's a doppler.
doppelganger.
Yeah.
I would give it 8 little Morphe scrotums out of 10, especially for the scene at the end where Silver is going to take Scrote with him and then doesn't, and lets
it's
him
such a
have his
good film.
pal, and it's really nice because it's a genuine sacrifice
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
from
was
Silver
nice.
there.
Good
Like he's
scene.
actually like he is okay with being alone and like gives his companion away freely because he knows that they'll be better off together and they need each other.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that is such a good scene.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was really nice. I think I would give it 9 distant father figures out of 10. Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I say it wasn't one that I had nostalgia for. I hadn't seen it until a couple of days ago. So like, yeah, even without the nostalgia, this was a really good, enjoyable movie.
Yeah,
It
it's
And
holds
solid.
that
up.
says a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, as,
Oh, yeah,
as
that's
someone who
the-
definitely did have a huge amount of nostalgia for the film, I'd say definitely earns it. Like it
Yeah.
does deserve
I was going to
nostalgia
say
and
that's
praise and
that's
stuff.
the theme of the podcast, isn't it? So does it hold up to your memories of it?
Yeah,
it-
absolutely. It absolutely does.
It absolutely deserves to be the film that killed 2D animation.
Like I said, it's that big, glorious, blazing Viking funeral for an
Yeah.
industry.
It was a joy to watch.
Well, and with that, I have been Dan.
I have been Michael.
I've been
And
Helena.
I've been shit.
Fuck you,
For
Jamie.
the first time.
I always go third.
How many? Like 8 episodes in? This is the first time it's ever happened where we have.
Oh god, you're not going to edit that out, are you?
No, we're not.
Well, I'm very sorry, and I'm also Jamie.
I've been Helena.
You can find us on Twitter at HiltonPod. That is at HILTM Pod, and you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and many other podcast networks. If you leave us a 5-star review, we might even read it.
We won't.
We won't.
If we can find it, we'll see.
Jamie will interrupt.
They will interrupt
No, I
us.
won't. Space noises.
Pirates.
Space pirates.
Space, and it's also the 18th century.